So we have to get back to humanity because lately, from what I'm seeing, we're losing this battle. We're online attacking one another. We're turning against one another, hurting one another because we feel as though you either do this or I'll get someone else to do it. A lot of people say, "Oh, that's cold." He shouldn't treat Darlene like that. And I'm not making any excuse for Brother Corey, but you don't know what he's dealt with in his life, and therefore, in the effects of that, you don't know what he's dealing with currently, in effects of what affected him in the past. And I believe that all of us have that same thing going on within ourselves. And it's just like my mother passed away this past December the 11th, and she was a very cruel, wicked, and inhumane woman. And she did a whole lot of dirt before she left here. And as a matter of fact, the biggest injury that she did to not only me but the rest of my family is that she never resolved her differences with anyone. So when she passed away, a person like me, I didn't feel anything. And that's not boasting. I'm not trying to boast in a way to where I didn't cry when my mother died. It's just that she put me in the position. I'm not blaming her, but due to the fact that her deeds of immorality were so deep and so outrageous and so painful, when a person like that passes on, you don't grieve for them. And it's not that you don't want to grieve for them, because naturally you should grieve when your mother passed on. However, due to the fact that the way she treated people and she treated herself, a lot of us are not able to grieve. I have a sister that's telling me, you have to forgive her. You have to forgive her. No, I don't have to do a damn thing. I don't have to do anything. And I'm the type of human being to where you have to resolve your differences with anyone. If there's ever going to be any forgiveness, you have to resolve your problems with people. And I've made a couple of videos a while back that are titled, There Can Be No Forgiveness Without Resolve. But a whole lot of these parents, they do a lot of evil, and then they refuse to resolve their differences with you. And then they pass on. And due to the effects of them passing on, all of a sudden they become a saint. All of a sudden they become a saint because people are not being honest with themselves, and therefore they want to they don't want to say anything that will make other people look at them kind of crazy. Now, simply because this person has passed on, it doesn't mean that they're saints. You're supposed to be a saint while you're living. What's hypocritical about life and death is that people are all of a sudden looked upon as saints simply because they pass away, and that's hypocritical. What makes you a saint is the way that you live and the way that you treat yourself and other people. And passing on without resolving your differences with your children, your friends, or whoever the case may be, what you leave behind is a you might as well say like a legacy of unresolved issues. And who has to live and deal with that? And the last thing that you want to hear someone say to you is that you have to forgive them. No, I don't have to do a damn thing. I don't have to do anything. Okay? And my not being able to grieve, to me, is justified. And I've moved on, so that's just the end of it. But I've always maintained a very good relationship with my sons. And one thing that I promised myself, that once I close my eyes for the last time, one of the things that's going to mean the most to me is that I am right with my children. I'm on good terms with my children. I'm not going to leave any memory or legacy behind with my sons feeling as though I did something to them or said something to them, and never resolve those differences, never apologize to them or anything like that. So what is most important is humanity. We have to get back to understanding exactly how to be human beings. Considering everything that's going on in the world, as I always say, the world is going into darkness, and the only way that the world is not going to go into darkness, we have to become better human beings. It's like Sir Krishnamurti has said, we are the world and the world is you. So the world is in the shape that it's in currently because of the human being. So what we do to one another, we do to ourselves, and what we do to ourselves, we do to one another. And that creates an environment that's either peaceful or hostile. So we have to get back to understanding the importance of what it means to be a human being. Now people have told me that well, she was your mother. Yeah, I knew that, but did she know that? I mean, this is a woman who I saw her in 1974 started her path of death when I walked into her room and she was smoking some marijuana. And I cried in front of my mother and said, Mama, she said, what are you crying for? What's wrong with you? And I told my mother, I said, Mama, I don't want you smoking that stuff. Because coming up on the south side of Chicago, the reason why I told my mother I didn't want her smoking that stuff is because I've already seen some things. I've saw people who started off with marijuana and they reduced themselves. You know how people say they graduated to cocaine? That's not a graduation. They started with marijuana and they demoted themselves to cocaine, and then they demoted themselves to acid, and it just went downhill from there. And when they hit the bottom of the hill, there was nothing but a casket there waiting for them. I saw this before I even saw my mother do drugs, and so I was telling her, I don't want you doing that, because I knew that weed was going to demote her to other areas of drugs that was going to eventually kill her. Now, she passed away this past December the 11th over a prescription drug overdose. My sister told me there was a time to where she would take 100, imagine this, Aleve pills. Imagine someone sitting up taking 100 Aleve pills. 100. A handful of Aleve, just doing it like that. Self-destructive. This is a person that has already died. So that's why when I talked to my Aunt Shanetta, who was the one who called me and told me that your mom passed away, I told my Aunt Shanetta, she's been dead. She's been dead since 1974. She's been dead for years. Because the path that she stood on and she decided to continue to walk was a path of death. And once you start the path of death, it doesn't matter how long it was when you first started it. The path of death is death. And until the time comes when your organism just can't take it no more, that's not your death. You died years ago when you started. That's another dual component. You start and you end it. So she basically killed herself. And so I have a really good sister who tells me that you have to forgive her. But this is a woman who put a lot of people into position to have to pass this particular information down to not only my sons, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. I had to get on the phone and tell my sons that your grandma passed away of a prescription drug overdose. That's the information that you left behind for me to tell my children, simply because you didn't care anything about your life. And so when you're dealing with human beings like that who are that irresponsible to where you have to pass this information down to your offspring, and then your offspring have to live with that information in their mind. My grandmother died of a drug overdose. My grandmother killed herself behind a prescription drug overdose. No. No forgiveness. Because there's no excuse. There's really no excuse. Well, and then they say, well, if you don't forgive her, then God ain't gonna forgive you. I could care less. I could care less. I'm just being real with it. So that blackmail stuff, that doesn't mean anything to me. She didn't care anything about her own life to the degree she destroyed herself. And she put everyone in the position to live with the reality that their grandmother and their great-grandmother and their mother destroyed herself for absolutely no reason. Because when her and my father broke up, I feel as though she didn't have any excuses. She didn't have to go out there and sell her body in order to feed me and my sister. She had my great-grandmother. Most of the failed marriages in my family, everyone was put over there with my great-grandmother, because my great-grandmother, Rebecca Keller, she said, bring all the babies over here, and until y'all get y'all act together, then you will know where they're at. So they didn't have to worry about any of us getting hurt or molested, and they knew exactly where we were. So they didn't have any excuses. She had no excuse. She's always been carried her whole life. She doesn't have any excuse. She didn't have any excuses. So my whole thing is, she destroyed herself, and I warned her way back in 1974. I told her, I said, Mama, I don't want you smoking those things. I don't want you smoking those things, because my eyes had already seen where that's going to lead to. At first I didn't completely understand exactly what my sister told me when her and I talked on the phone. She said, I've been searching for a mother all of my life. And then a couple of days ago, my mind reflected back to something that my sister told me, that she said, I went to pick up Mama for breakfast. So, we wanted to just get together and go out for breakfast. Pause. So this is a woman who thought about her mother. She said, okay, well, I'm going to pick Mama up, and we're just going to go out and have a nice breakfast together. That's the mother image that she was looking for. But as time went on, while they were eating breakfast, she happened to look across the table, and my mother was sitting up, slobbing out of her mouth, asleep. Because she had so many prescription drugs in her. So my sister wasn't able to enjoy a relationship between her and my mother. So that's the mother that she is left to remember. So I totally understand my sister, even though me and my sister are estranged right now. But I understand exactly what she means, because I had an image. We all have an image of the type of parents that we would like to have and enjoy during this life experience. However, a whole lot of us have only been disappointed. And it's not just us, it's a whole lot of us. A whole lot of us. And then when they pass on, they never resolve their differences. And we're left feeling betrayed and abandoned. And then someone comes up and tells you, you still have to forgive them because those were still your parents. You can't forgive anyone unless you resolve your differences. And a whole lot of these parents destroy themselves without taking the time to sit down and talk about what they've done, listen to your children, and help your children heal on the inside. But a lot of these parents just die off and leave a whole lot of wounds behind. A lot of them die off and leave a whole lot of wounds behind. I would consider this video a bit important. Today is a Mother's Day, and my mother died this past December the 11th. I believe I mentioned that in some of my videos. And you know, those in my family and some people who I come up with as my friends who have already lost their mother, well, I wouldn't say lost their mother, but they have, see, to them, their mother was lost. To me, it was just time for their mothers to pass on. So therefore, those who I know whose mothers have passed on are, seems like a lot of people was observing me today and thought that I was going to express some type of response or some type of reaction or verbalization on my Facebook. But it only showed me that a lot of people were not taking me serious. You know, I totally understand everyone's expectations and their reactions and their responses. However, I find it a bit of a challenge for them to accept the men who have been through so much and has been totally crushed by life, and yet still he managed to come back as a human being. I find it difficult for them to believe that the principles that I've learned how to live by totally supersedes my emotions, or what most people call today my emotional intelligence. When you are a human being who lives strictly on principle and principle of action based upon each human being's treatment of one another and therefore themselves, when you are serious about that, and when the seriousness is so, I won't say strong, but sound is a lot more a better description than strong, because strong implies that you're still trying to maintain your position, which doesn't necessarily mean that you are sound in your position, because you're strong and you're trying to maintain something. But I've become very sound in my position as a human being when it comes to principles and attachments and all of those areas. When I was in Georgia and I was suffering, I made a video about one night. This is when I was with that woman, Salam Yilma. And it was one night that I got up and I went into this nearby woods area, because I was sleeping downstairs inside of this patio area in which she created as a room for her to rent for people who needed a place to stay. So I believe it was 3:30, between 3:15 and 3:30 in the morning. I got up and I walked out of the back, the sliding doors, and I walked through her backyard and outside the fence. And when you walk outside the fence to your left, there's a huge wooded area of where I would see a lot of deers come out of that particular area. But even though it was 3:15 in the morning, you might as well say, I went into that wooded area, and as I was moving forward, it was very dark, but the moon was out. And therefore, the only light that I had in that particular area was the moonlight that was shining through the trees. And as I walked forward, due to the fact that I was new to that particular area, my awareness at the time of being in a place where I've never been, a little bit of concern triggered a slight fear in me, because I was in a place that was sacred to me. I wasn't certain what I was walking towards, because I wasn't certain where I was walking. And so as I walked forward, I came upon an area inside the woods to where it looked like it was, you might as well say, like carved out of a huge circular area. And it looked like an area of where our people used to have like private meetings when they wanted to discuss something, or it could have been an area of where a whole lot of our elders back in the days used to create moonshine in the middle of the night. And I figured that because in the middle of the circular area, there were a few burnt logs, of course. And so that particular night, I went there to meditate. And so once I set myself in a meditating position, not this crap that you see with with your hands like this. No, that's not meditation, because you're trying to maintain this position, and your mind can't be on maintaining any position. Your mind actually has to be on absolutely nothing at all. Not even the reason why you're there. Is difficult as that may sound. You just have to be present. And being present is enough. And by me understanding that, I was able to accomplish meditation in that very sacred area. And so once I was able to accomplish the proper status for meditation, the concern and the fear fled me. And so while in meditation, the Creator was bringing things before me. And it came for me to realize that regardless of what was going on, I myself currently, as David, was the problem. Because the state, the condition that I was in, it was because of myself, regardless of what transpired, and regardless of her treatment towards me. And what I learned from there is there has to be a death of the current person. So I went into meditation. And once I went into meditation with the information that the current David was the problem, I allowed myself to find the current person repulsive, irresponsible, and along with that, in order for you to die of the current person and to become a new person, you have to hate the current person. And so once I allowed myself to hate who I am, in order for me to grow into who I should be, that's when the you might as well say resurrection started, or the birth started. And so, to my understanding, I was into meditation for about 40 minutes. And then after 40 minutes, I came out. I was brought out of meditation. And I was different. You know, people say, did you feel different? No, there were no feelings involved. Because if I was able to feel a difference, then it only means that I was still the person that I needed to discard. I was something new. And what I noticed is that all of the hurt and the humiliation and all of the resentment that I had for her and the whole situation was gone. And therefore I was this person who I was no longer able to relate to what was going on around me, because that person, I died to him. And I bring all of that up. Move too fast. And so once I walked back in the place where I was staying, I laid down and I slept very soundly. But the reason why this is all being brought up is because from that point on, I noticed when I became new, a lot of things about myself changed. I was, I would have to say I was dead to a whole lot of things, like a lot of hurt, attachments. I didn't have any more attachments. I didn't have any fear. And I felt like I was able to withstand anything that transpired in my life in terms of any coming preconditions. I was going to be able to withstand it, and I was going to be able to survive it. And so from that point on, I still understood that I'm a man of spirit, I'm a man of principle, and from remaining as such, I was able to walk forward and make the right decisions and therefore do the right thing. And so I bring all that up just because by today being Mother's Day, and by this being the first year of the earth being without my mother's physical presence, everyone was expecting some type of reaction. And it just shows you that people really don't take you seriously when you tell them you're a man of principle. And you've learned the power of detachment. And you've learned the power of acceptance after you've detached. Now, the power of acceptance is basically the ability to accept things as they are and not what you wish them to be, rather holding on to the past or regretting of what you did not have. That's the power of acceptance. You accept what is, and you accept being without what you thought you deserved in terms of what you didn't have. You're able to accept. The power of acceptance is very liberating and it's very enlightening. And for a lot of people who don't understand that, and the common person is not going to be able to understand it, you have to suffer in life if you want to really be enlightened. Enlightenment does not come by way of an easy journey. It doesn't. If you want to be enlightened, you have to suffer. I mean, even the Buddha, he felt as though he had to starve himself in order to reach enlightenment. Now, self-starvation is a form of self-imposed suffering. And he felt as though for him to allow himself to starve, he felt like he was going to reach enlightenment, but he found out otherwise. And so he found out otherwise. And so he went back to taking care of himself. And then when you look at Yeshua, when he was led to the desert by the Creator, he went 40 days and 40 nights. And they said that he fasted 40 days and 40 nights. And then once he got to the point to where he was starving, that's when the tempter from within tried to challenge him and tried to tempt the Father which was within him. But after that, then the Creator sent the angels to minister to him. In other words, to take care of him. But he had to suffer in order to reach a certain level. No levels of enlightenment. He had to suffer to reach enlightenment. And the reason why I said there's no levels of enlightenment is because there's only knowledge that has levels. So we're talking about degrees of knowledge. It's like going to college and I'm going to get this degree in this particular area, which only means that once you get that degree, you only have a certain degree portion of that knowledge. It doesn't imply that you're finished in that particular area. That's why you have to remain in school or go back in school to earn your master's. Masters imply reaching the apex of that particular curriculum. And there is no more currently to know of this particular curriculum, because if there was more learned curriculum to be established in that particular area, then you wouldn't be at your master's. You would still be at a degree of information. So only what you master in, the system's educational system is basically trying to equate your master's degree to a human being who has reached enlightenment, which is not. Enlightenment is a person who have been brought into the know. It has nothing to do with knowledge. It has everything to do with wisdom and intelligence, and not a certain degree of intelligence, but intelligence itself, meaning that you can move forward and your divine intelligence, because it has to be divine intelligence, is going to imbue in you an intelligence that is universal. And it's very few people on the planet that have reached that or allowed themselves to reach that by way of the Creator's permission. So all of this being brought forth, it explains the reason why a lot of people this day don't understand me. And I've even gotten to the point, I've even reached the point, I'll put it like this, I've been risen to the point, because it has nothing to do with me, to where those type of concerns of other people are no longer my concerns. How come people don't understand me? Oh, you just don't understand me. You know, I've moved beyond it. I've been taken beyond it. And once you're at that point, you're able to move forward and the common responses and the reactions that people expect you to have, because they have that for themselves by celebrating their mothers on this particular day. And see, they're able to celebrate their mother on this particular day because they have a mother. I only had a mother physically, but not based upon the divine principles that she was supposed to fulfill when she was physically on this planet. She didn't fulfill those principles. And so what others have experienced in terms of having a mother, I didn't experience those things. My mother was very worldly. My mother was very irresponsible. She was very wicked, you know. And so when you are a person who lives based upon principles, who know these attributes of your mother, to me, that doesn't put me in the position to celebrate anything. And it goes back to what Yeshua had said about his physical mother Mary. When Mary came upon him and the disciples, she came upon him with his half-brother James. And Mary, after Joseph passed, I don't know if she remarried, or I really don't know what happened. I don't know where this half-brother James came from. But the Bible speaks of Mary showing up with Jesus' half-brother James. And so when the disciples saw that she had arrived, I believe it was his disciple. It was either James or Peter had announced to Yeshua that his mother and his brother has arrived. Yeshua says, "Who is my mother? Who is my brother?" Then he pointed to his disciples. "Those who do the will of my Father, those are they who are my mother, my sister, my brother." So, with him saying that, did he feel as though his mother had committed something that took her out of the will of the Father? See, because when things are said like that, there was a reasoning behind why he said those things. So he did not accept his mother on a spiritual basis or a basis of divine principle. He rejected her. He rejected her why? And if you notice in the Bible, he never referred to his mother as mother. He always called her woman. Woman. So everything is principle. Everything is principle. Because to address her as mother, he has to be talking upon the physical, the flesh. So he didn't accept her as his mother based upon principle or spirit. Now, a lot of pastors would challenge me on that, and a lot of pastors have during a whole lot of pastor meetings. But I would advise some of you to probe into that and check that out. But when people hear you and you tell them where you are based upon your personal evolution in terms of where you are spiritually and where your convictions are when it comes to living certain principles, the majority of the time those people are really not listening to you. They hear you, but they're really not listening to you. I mean, they equivalent, they take your position as equivalent to entertainment. They just think you're just talking, but they're finding it difficult for you. They find it difficult that you're taking your life that serious. And there we are with the comparison thing. The reason why they can't take you as you are is because they're looking at you and they're comparing themselves to you because they haven't made it to that state of being yet. And simply because they haven't made it to that state of being, they reject you when you say that you've made it to that state of being. So, what my friends and family, especially the people who I grew up with, notice that it's nothing for me to celebrate because I wasn't put in the position to be able to celebrate. It's like when my granddad passed away on my father's side. This is after I had left Chicago and I went to California, and I was staying out there with my mother in Brisbane, California, before I ventured to Nevada's Job Corps in Sierra Nevada. He called out there and he asked my mother to speak to me because he wanted to speak to me, and I got on the phone. He said, "I just want you to know that your granddad passed away." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, when did he pass?" He said, "He passed last night." He said, "Yeah, I just wanted you to know that." I said, "Okay." And he paused, and then he said, "Let me speak back to your mama." So I gave my mother the phone, and I went and I sat down. And he told my mother on the phone, he acted like he don't care. She said, "What do you mean?" I just told him that his grandfather died. And he acts like he doesn't care. She told him, Van, which is my dad's name for it, Levan, Levan. You never took him down south to meet his grandfather. She said, he doesn't know him. How is he going to feel any way about that man's death? He didn't know him. You never took him down south to meet him. So how is he going to know? How is he going to grieve for a man that he knows not? And so we're dealing with a dual component, because when you fulfill your divine principles as a parent in any area, grandfather, father, mother, whatever, a lot of people will be better off not knowing than a person coming up with a parent, knowing them all their life, and suffer neglect and abuse. I would rather had not ever known both of my parents. I would rather not ever know them, because considering those who don't know their parents and yet still were raised up by real good and grounded foster parents, they're not feeling the pain, because by principle of action, the foster parents have fulfilled the principles, the divine principles of mothers and fathers, in spite if those children are adopted. Those people decided to say, I will be his mother, I will be his father. And so they decided to fulfill the principles of a mother and a father. And they raised this child up. And due to the fact that those principles of action were being fulfilled through the years, the child, through time, being affected by the goodness of them fulfilling the divine principles of actions of being a father and a mother. Connect with them emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, and even physically, to the degree they don't see anyone else as their parents other than the people who have adopted them. Everything is principle. And when you say that, people find it so difficult to believe that and therefore to accept that. Accept it. And those are the people that say, well, she was still your mother. Yeah, unfortunate. But she didn't fulfill the divine principles. She loved drugs a whole lot more than being a mother. And that's what got her out of here, by her self-termination. She took herself out by way of the things she loved the most. So you asking me, how come I'm not acknowledging her? Acknowledging what? What am I supposed to acknowledge? What am I supposed to acknowledge? See, those people are acknowledging that they had a mother. So what am I supposed to do? During this particular day, I'm supposed to acknowledge that I didn't have a mother? No. Because if I do that, then you see, he's disrespecting his mom. I tell you what, why don't a whole lot of you guys just go on with your life? Because my life is totally different from a whole lot of people on this planet. Like I keep trying to tell people. Until you walk in my moccasins and suffer the thing that I've suffered and come out of the storms that I suffered in them storms, there's nothing that you can say about it. Nothing. Instead of always walking on the side looking down at me, when you can easily turn around and you have access to your parents. And as long as your parents are living, you can resolve your issues with your parents if you want to. Unfortunately, when she was living, she didn't want to resolve it because she couldn't look at herself. My dad is alive today. And he's not interested in resolving our issues because he don't feel as though he's done anything wrong when wrong is all he's done to me. Am I grieving that? No, I've accepted that and I've moved on. But the whole thing is, when you live upon principle, a lot of these emotional times are not going to affect you because you died to that person who was holding on to that, who's holding on to all of those pains. The one who wanted to be able to celebrate his Mother's Day and his Father's Day, but he couldn't because they refused to resolve their differences with him so that he may be able to celebrate them. He's dead. I got rid of him in Georgia. I left his ass right in them woods. I left him behind. So, with that being said, always live upon principle. Principle is everything. It's everything. And regardless of how people see you or how they think of you, it's not important. You live your life based upon principle and feed off of the enlightenment that you have been blessed with in order to utilize for your guidance and your walk within this human journey. And with that being said, I hope this video was understood. So everyone have a good night.